The cruelest part of being sold was not the auction. It was what came next. The road. Because once the wagon started moving, nobody told you where you were going. Nobody told you whether your mother had been taken north, whether your child had been taken south, or whether the man who bought you had paid for your body alone, or for the right to erase everything attached to it. That is where the first 24 hours begin. Not when the bidding ends. When certainty ends. A few minutes earlier, you were still standing on the platform. Hands had pressed your arms. A stranger had checked your teeth. Someone had judged your back, your legs, your price, as if strength and grief could be measured together. And the part people miss is this. Most enslaved people did not arrive at auction as isolated figures. They came with someone. A mother, a brother, a husband, a little girl holding onto a dress hem because that fabric was the last safe thing in the world. Traders knew that. Keeping people near family made them easier to move, easier to control, easier to sell. Then, at the auction block, love became leverage. A buyer did not need to keep a family together. He only needed cash. So, a woman could watch her son sold first, hear his crying while she was still waiting for her own price, and know, before her turn even came, that the old shape of her life was already gone. That is why the road mattered so much. Because the sale was the blow. The journey was the realization. You are put into a wagon, or tied into a moving line, or ordered to walk behind a horse. The land changes as you go. The color of the dirt changes. The smell of the air changes. The trees thin out, then crowd in again. In the deep south, the heat can feel heavier, lower, closer to the skin. And all the while, the world keeps behaving as if nothing happened. A white family sits down to supper. A store closes for the evening. Children laugh in a yard. Meanwhile, your entire existence has just been broken open. That indifference is part of the violence. You are not being escorted anywhere. You are being transferred. You are property in motion. And maybe the worst part of that road is that you keep looking back. Not because you think you can return. Because some small part of the mind refuses to accept that the people you love are not coming into view. So you look once, then again, then one more time. And each time, the road behind you is empty. By the time the new plantation comes into sight, something inside you already knows the truth. The sale was not the end of the punishment. It was the opening act. Then you see it. The owner's house. The work buildings. The smokehouse. The rows of cabins set back from the main yard. This is where your life has been sent. And you know nothing about it. You do not know the rules of this place. You do not know how quickly this overseer reaches for the whip. You do not know whether mistakes are explained here or simply punished. Usually, before anything else, they look you over again. Not like a crowd now, more like possessions settling in. Questions come fast. How old are you? What kind of work did you do? Can you cook? Can you sew? Can you cut cane? Can you pick cotton? Can you lift? Can you breed? And then, sometimes, something even more intimate is taken. Your name. Not every enslaver did this. Many did. And when they did, it was not a small administrative change. It was a declaration. Whoever you were before, that person does not matter here. The name your mother used, the sound attached to your childhood, the word that meant you were known, gone. Or at least, gone in public. Many formerly enslaved people carried two selves after that. The hidden self, kept alive in memory, and the assigned self, the one spoken out loud to survive. That split was not weakness. It was strategy. A private refusal to disappear. After inspection, you are taken to the cabins. This is the part that history often rushes past. Arrival is not only about fear of the master. It is also about entering a community that already has its own codes. The people in these cabins have built systems for survival. They know who shares food, who keeps watch, who can set a bone, who knows the overseer's temper by the way he walks. And now you enter that world as a stranger. Sometimes the welcome came quickly. An older woman might bring a little food. Someone might point out where to sleep. Another person might quietly explain the rules no one announces. Do not be late to the yard. Do not trust the false kindness on the first day. Do not answer every question. Watch first. But sometimes the reception was guarded, because a new arrival could mean trouble. More work redistributed. New tensions. New surveillance. A possible disruption the owner had introduced on purpose. Enslavers understood something dangerous. People are harder to dominate when they know one another too well. So on some plantations, they mixed regions, languages, customs. Not by accident, by design. If solidarity was a threat, isolation became policy. Then night falls. And the first night is not dramatic in the way films imagine. It is quieter than that. More brutal for being quiet. You lie down in a cabin that does not know you. The wood sounds different. The insects sound different. The breathing around you belongs to strangers. And there, in the dark, your mind begins trying to do impossible work. Where are they? Are they alive? Did my child eat? Did my mother hear me calling? Did my husband see which road they took me down? There is no funeral for this kind of loss. No grave. No confirmed death. No final word. Only absence. Enforced, deliberate, unresolved absence. Before I take you into the morning, subscribe to the channel if you want more history told at the level of lived experience, not just dates and summaries. Because this story did not live in statistics first. It lived in human bodies. And in the dark, on that first night, the body understood it before history ever wrote it down. Morning comes early. A bell, a horn, a banging on wood. You do not know the signal yet, but everyone around you moves. So you move. This is your first morning, and everything about it is a test you were never allowed to study for. Where do you stand? When do you eat? Who speaks? Who keeps their eyes down? How fast is fast enough? How much pain is considered normal here? On many plantations, a newly purchased person was given the hardest work immediately. Not because that made practical sense. Because domination likes ceremony. The system wanted the lesson to land early. You are at the bottom. You will learn through exhaustion. And this place will introduce itself through pain. So if you had been doing domestic work before, and now you are sent to the fields, your body feels the difference within an hour. Hands split open. Shoulders burn. Your lower back locks up from movements it never made for this long. The overseer watches. Sometimes impatient. Sometimes entertained. Sometimes with the cold boredom of a man looking at machinery that should already know how to function. But this is where another truth enters. The plantation tried to make people into units. Enslaved people kept remaking one another into human beings. A man beside you shows you how to angle the hoe so it wastes less strength. A woman farther down the row covers for your pace when the overseer looks away. Somebody passes water when they can. Somebody mutters one sentence that matters more than any order you heard that day. Keep your hands like this. Save your back. Breathe here. Not so fast. He is watching. These acts look small from the outside. They were not small. In a system built on extraction, care becomes resistance. By midday, if there is a break at all, you meet the next reality. Food. Or rather, the uncertainty of food. Rations on many plantations were calculated for output, not health. Cornmeal. Salted pork if you were lucky. Molasses sometimes. Fresh food rarely. And as a new arrival, you might not even have your own ration yet. Distribution may already have happened. Your name may not be on anyone's count. Your hunger may be nobody's official concern. So your first meal in this new life may depend entirely on whether another enslaved person, already underfed, chooses to make room for you anyway. And again in the historical record, people did. They shared from almost nothing. Sometimes from their own ration. Sometimes from a garden patch. Sometimes from food taken at risk from the owner's supply. That meal meant more than calories. It said, you were sent here as property, but that is not all you are. You belong among us because we decide you do. And for a few minutes under the weight of that first day, that truth could keep a person standing. Not free, not safe, but not entirely alone. You have survived the first day, but survival is not relief. Because when the body finally stills, memory gets louder. And many formerly enslaved people said the second evening was worse than the first. The first night can be numbness. The second brings recognition. Now you know what the road meant. Now you know the cabin is real. Now you know the faces around you are not temporary. One formerly enslaved man later described lying awake and trying to hold on to the exact sound of his wife's voice. He could still see her face. But the voice, he said, was already beginning to fade. Think about the terror inside that sentence. Not only losing the person, losing the sound of the person. That is what sale could do. It did not merely separate bodies. It attacked memory. And I need to stop here and speak about children. Because for a child sold away from a parent, these first 24 hours could become a lifelong wound in a single day. A child does not understand debt. The child does not understand market logic. A child understands this. My mother was here. Now she is not. That is enough to shatter the world. The testimonies we have are devastating. Children who stopped speaking. Children who would not eat. Children who woke in the dark crying for a mother no one in the room could bring back. And the adults in those cabins, themselves broken open by sale and labor, would rock those children anyway. Not because they had spare strength. Because there was no moral alternative. This was not rare. The domestic slave trade in the United States moved roughly 1 million enslaved people from the Upper South to the Deep South between the late 18th century and the Civil War. 1 million. Which means the first 24 hours I've described here were not exceptional. They were repeated. Again. And again. And again. That matters. Because when slavery is discussed only as labor, only as economics, only as a system of production, something essential disappears. The sale was itself a technology of terror. It taught every enslaved mother that love could be used against her. It taught every father that protection had limits the market did not respect. It taught children that stability could vanish by noon. And wounds like that do not stop at the end of the day. They travel. Through families. Through habits of fear. Through guarded love. Through the desperate need not to trust calm too easily. This is not weakness. It is what people learn when a system punishes attachment. And yet, there is one more truth inside this story. They rebuilt. Not immediately. Not completely. Not without scars that never left. But they rebuilt. New ties formed in the quarters. Chosen mothers. Chosen brothers. Chosen elders. Chosen children. People learned which hands could heal. Which voices could be trusted. Which prayers were whispered here. Which songs carried sorrow without surrendering to it. That rebuilding was not proof that slavery was survivable in any moral sense. It was proof of something else. That the people forced into this system kept generating humanity inside a machine designed to crush it. And I want to be very clear here. Their resilience was not a gift from slavery. Slavery did not make them noble. It did not make them deep. It did not forge strength in some romantic way. That strength was already theirs. It came from culture, from memory, from spiritual life, from the stubborn, daily refusal to let the oppressor define the full meaning of one's existence. So when we talk about the first 24 hours after being sold to a new plantation, we are not talking about relocation. We are talking about shock, about identity theft, about grief without closure, about forced labor used as introduction, about children learning terror too early, about communities of enslaved people performing acts of care that the system neither deserved nor could stop. And if there is any dignity in this history, it lives there, not in the plantation, not in the market, not in the mythology that tried to sanitize all of it. It lives in the people who kept recognizing one another as human after every structure around them said otherwise. If this video gave you a fuller picture of what slavery actually did, share it with someone else, because forgetting is one more form of violence. And remembering, honestly, is the minimum. These were real people. They had names before someone tried to replace them. They had families before someone sold them apart. They had inner lives, memory, humor, faith, fear, love. The least we can do now is refuse the version of history that makes any of that disappear.